Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Charles. I want to welcome you guys to another episode of The Conversation. And the question is, will the Clippers make Max Kellerman look like a genius these coming playoffs? So that's what I want to get into in this video today. But before we get into that, I want you guys to go ahead and please hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. We're trying to get to 5,000 subs as soon as possible. So please make sure you go ahead and do that. And also don't forget to hit the notification bell to be notified whenever we drop our content. So let's just get straight into the content today. So today I'm going to be focusing on the playoffs and Max Kellerman, who I don't really see a lot of videos being done about him online. And Max Kellerman has been known to have some interesting takes. He's one of the co-hosts of ESPN First Take with Stephen A. Smith, and he's an American sports TV personality who's really known for his boxing commentary. That's really where he got his bread and butter. But then, Stephen A. Smith tapped him on the shoulder to be the co-host on ESPN's First Take, which is probably the biggest American sports, talk show, sports show in the morning in the United States. And he co-hosts the show with Stephen A. Smith. If I have to compare Max Kellerman to Stephen A. Smith, Max Kellerman seems to be a little bit more logical in a lot of his assessments, whereas Stephen A. Smith seems to be a little bit more emotional. He tends to make a lot of emotional, picks, especially when we're going into the playoffs, who he thinks is going to win series. He usually says, my mind is telling me this, but my heart is telling me that. So even, going into these playoffs, he's picking the Lakers, but he says because he just believes in his heart that the Lakers will win, but his mind is telling him that the Clippers have a better team, but he'll still go with the Lakers. So that's sort of how Stephen A. Smith seems to, arrive at his predictions. And Max Kellerman is a little bit more measured when it comes to his predictions. Now, Max Kellerman has had a history of picking the Clippers and really giving props to Kawhi Leonard and how he feels that the Clippers will perform in the regular season. But before I go too far into that, I just want you guys to let's take a listen to sort of like a compilation of Max Kellerman talking about the Clippers.
Let's not sit here and pretend that the Clippers are not on the come up. The Clippers are what's known as a growth business. The Lakers are that market is saturated. How are they going to really grow? They're worldwide. The people in LA who love the Lakers, but the Clippers are going to make new generations of fans now. That will ultimately eat into the Lakers market. They didn't do it in the Blake Griffin, CP3, DeAndre Jordan era because they weren't good enough. The Lakers left the window open. The Clippers closed it for them, right? But this Clippers team, I'm telling you right now, will win a championship, and I believe that will happen this year. And when that happens, you will create...
This year?
This season. When that happens, they will create new fans in LA that are Clippers fans instead of Lakers fans. That is going to happen. Exactly
That's what I'm
happening.
saying.
Who have I been talking about the last 2 years? I've been talking about Kawhi Leonard because he is the best. I mean, he was excellent in the regular season last year, but the freak looked like the man.
Not the last
but
2
once
years.
you saw, once he got back from injury, once you saw him in the playoffs with a season under him, right? Because it usually takes catastrophic injury. It takes a while to get back. By the time the playoffs rolled around, he's the best player on earth. He hasn't relinquished that. I mean, this is what I'm talking about. And here's the thing about Kawhi Leonard. He is a cyborg sent from the future, back in time to destroy everyone's hopes and dreams.
He wasn't last week when they went through that little losing streak and he was jumping and pouting on the court.
He
wasn't that cyborg then.
He is trying to get.
Did he just say cyborg?
Yeah.
Paul George
Paul
George has been hurt, and he is trying to get a group of guys to the promised land. He's leading. My point is, all the pressure, all the story of LeBron, that does not faze Kawhi. He got ice water. So you're right. Not just me. Everyone should be talking about Kawhi. But he wants it, Stephen A.
I think you guys are missing
the
point, though, Stephen A. I think people aren't talking about Kawhi because Kawhi's personality. People are talking about LeBron.
So in those sound bites, you will hear Max Kellerman kind of speaking glowingly of the Clippers and how he feels that, they're going to win the championship, and he has this great belief in Kawhi Leonard. Now, he's one of the very few that has been on the Kawhi Leonard bandwagon for a few years now. He thought that Kawhi has been the second best player in the NBA for the last few years, even when he was with the San Antonio Spurs. Some people said it was LeBron and then KD, but Max Kellerman had always contended that he believed Kawhi Leonard was the second best player in the world Shaquille O'Neal was one of those few people, and even Charles Barkley was one of the people that said, "Man, Kawhi Leonard is no dude, and no joke." And if you watch, TNT when they would do these highlights, these recaps of highlights, and you hear Charles Barkley talk about Kawhi Leonard, he was like, "Man, this dude is so good. He's just so good." And Max Kellerman has been one of the voices, and he's been on the Kawhi Leonard bandwagon. But I remember when the Toronto Raptors ended up winning the NBA championship, and he said, whatever team that Kawhi Leonard decides to go to, that will be the team that wins the championship. And it just goes to show you, even before Kawhi ended up going to the Clippers, without any knowledge of him possibly even landing Paul George, Max Kellerman has always been beating the drum of Kawhi Leonard and the Clippers. And he's always maintained all throughout this season that he believes that the Clippers are going to win the championship. Now, if we look at the Clippers, currently they are in the number 2 seed in the Western Conference with a 44-20 record, and the Lakers have a 49-14 record. And let me just say this, the Clippers are not catching the Lakers. Now, what's been impressive, though, about the Clippers is that so many of their stars have been in and out of the lineup. Paul George has missed a good amount of games because, the beginning of the season, he had a shoulder injury. So he had to have shoulder surgery. So he missed training camp and he missed some games at the beginning of the season. Then in the latter stages of the season, he had a hamstring pull, which caused him to be in and out of the lineup. Kawhi Leonard has been in and out of the lineup because of load management. So I think he plays 3 out of every 4 games. Then you had Lou Williams, and then you had some other players coming in and out of the lineup due to injury. So the Clippers, it's been rare for them to have their entire roster healthy, and be able to play like 10, 15, 20 games in a row. And I remember in All-Star Weekend, Kawhi was interviewed, I think, by Shaq and them, and he said they've had less than a handful of practices all throughout the season, which is astonishing when you think about it. And still, this team has the number 2 record in the Western Conference, given all of these different variables that I just laid out for you guys. So it's pretty impressive to see that, given all of these things I just mentioned, they still have been able to stay above water, and they're the number 2 seed in the Western Conference. If we're just looking at the standings, that's pretty impressive to me for them to be able to do that. But towards the end of the lockdown, what we saw was that they finally were healthy and they were beginning to play some really good basketball. Doc Rivers had done something. He took a deliberate decision where he decided that he wanted Kawhi Leonard now to start playing the best offensive players on opposing teams to just get his defensive juices flowing again to prepare him for the playoffs. And if you go back and look at some of those games between the Suns or the Memphis Grizzlies, you will see that Kawhi Leonard was playing fantastic on the ball defense on a lot of these premier perimeter players. But then, of course, we had a halt in games, and also they dropped that game to the Lakers. But yet and still, Max Kellerman has always contended that he still believes that the Clippers are going to win the NBA championship. And he said that Kawhi Leonard is a Terminator, man. He always says he was sent from the future to come here and destroy everybody. And he just, always believes that the Clippers are going to win. And that's why, in my opinion, in my honest assessment, I think the Clippers are going to end up proving them right at the end of the regular season. And I think the Clippers are going to come away with the NBA championship. And if they do, I think a lot of people need to listen to Max Kellerman just a little bit more with some of his predictions. Now, he's had some wacky takes in the past that I don't agree with, and he said some things that's really made you scratch your head. But for this particular topic, the dude has been pretty consistent all throughout the regular season, and even towards the end of last season, that he just had this firm belief that Kawhi would be able to do it again. So what I want to know from you guys is pretty simple. Do you think that the Clippers are going to make Max Kellerman look like a genius, or do you think that Kawhi Leonard and these Clippers are going to let him down at the end of the regular season and somebody else is going to end up winning the NBA championship? Whatever you guys think, please leave your thoughts and comments in the comment section below. Again, if you enjoyed the video, make sure you go ahead and hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and hit the notification bell to be notified whenever we drop our content. Once again, this is Charles here from Dreamerspro. Wishing you guys an amazing day. Peace.